I think I put together a presentation that doesn't look exactly like what you've seen already. We know the guys at Future Mobility Network, we know the guys at Osh and a lot of other people here. So I tried to put together a story that also doesn't overlap with what Ruder just said and dives a little bit more into the details and tells the story about who we are. Not just to advertise ourselves, but because I think that it's, the role is important in the future of implementing autonomous vehicles. So let's jump right into it. Bit of background about ourselves, I think very relevant in relation to the last question about selling private cars. We are a corporate startup. We're owned by the largest car importer in Denmark, until recently 100% owned by the largest car importer in Denmark. We started back in 2016. Some would say too early. I wouldn't disagree with them in terms of the technological advancements in this area. But we recently got a confirmation that this area is still very relevant in that Amag from Switzerland, the same equivalent Volkswagen importer retailer, took an ownership in us, a third of it. So we have new energy, we have new funding, we have a European perspective on implementing autonomous vehicles. So that's me looking awkward there at the signing ceremony. And why do we exist? It always starts with a McKinsey report, right? So 16, 17, McKinsey comes and says ACES or CASE, and specifically that autonomy and this smart shared mobility is going to come and disrupt the private car ownership. So my current owners at Semler said, we got to do something about this. We don't want to be disrupted. Let's start our own disruption internally. Let's start Holo. So we've been on this mission for a while now. We started back in 16, I joined in 18. So the mission has been the same the whole way through. We want to put autonomous vehicles on the road, both for passenger transportation, for freight, because we think it can improve the system. Yeah, maybe I would like to say this is a bit of an appetizer in terms of the limited time I have. All of these slides will be shared. All of them can kind of be double-clicked into to more details if you want, and I'll be here the rest of the day to have the discussion with you if you want. The mission and the vision has been the same the whole time. I'm pretty open about the fact that the original strategy didn't work. Back in 16 and when I joined in 18, the mission was to put the autonomous vehicles on the road, the mini shuttles that you see in the picture with Ruder's branding in the center of Oslo. Those are our vehicles. So we were operating at the time that we peaked at the end of 19. We had 10 Navia vehicles deployed to routes all over Scandinavia. We were some of the first to have permits in Finland, Estonia, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. And then a lot of things happened at the same time, including Corona, and we basically said we don't think that this is going to happen. So I became the CEO in 2020, and we basically have been working since then to pull the plugs on these kind of projects because we don't think that they will succeed. It's not what the customers want, and we cannot deliver the actual use case of autonomy using these vehicles. So what we're doing in the meantime is we're finding the next level of technology. We want to go into projects like the one we now have with Ruder, with Mobileye. And we want to share the risk with whoever brings technology to the stage. If it's not mature, of course, we can find a way to deploy it, but that doesn't mean that we or our customers should take that whole risk. We need to find the right balance. And this is my call to action. Maybe it should have been at the end. We also want to share our knowledge and all the stuff that we have built up, which is my next slides, with the rest. I think one of the big risks in this industry is that everyone thinks too small and too local. We do need to kind of raise our eyes a little bit and work together. So we work with Future Mobility Network. We talk to Ush a lot, and we try to kind of find out where we can help each other. Because, of course, some of the big American companies might be coming to steal our lunch soon. Maybe we'll be their customers, but maybe there'll be other competitors as well. Right. So I call Holo an implementation company for autonomous software. So we actually work across these different segments. We're not going to go too much into the red and only briefly discuss the yellow ones, or actually I'm going to leave some of the green ones out as well, because today is about this bottom left corner. We're not going to see people drones anytime soon, despite what you see from Dubai or somewhere else. So we're not working on that at the moment. We have this project with Ruder in Oslo and the Mobileye vehicles, but actually I'm quite open also about that to say that if we didn't have that project and Ruder pushing the agenda as a very ambitious customer of ours, we would probably wait a little bit to see what's coming next, because we do think that there is a little bit more maturity needed. We will get the chance to mature these things with Ruder in the project with Mobileye, but there are some components missing. Some people here today have said that technology works. yes, the autonomous software works, but as you will see in my later slides, there's a lot of other things that need to work as well. In the meantime, we have a pretty high expectation of freight transportation in the air using drones, freight transportation on the ground. We have done projects in these areas. I have not included any slides about that today because I simply don't have the time. If you're interested, I'm more than happy to go into the details about this. Also, we saw the Clevon vehicle earlier. Similar use cases to that we're very interested in that. So the timeline, and to establish our credentials a little bit, we have been on public roads since 2018, and we drove continuously up until August of 2022, including the projects that Lars Gunnar showed with Ruder, with the Navia vehicles, and then with the Sensible 4 vehicles. When you see the vehicle driving in the snow, it's our safety drivers behind the wheel. It's our operational setup, making sure that things work, and that we do things safely. It's our commercial relationship with the vehicle vendor to get those vehicles in to Norway and get all the permits in place. Right now, we're not driving. We are in the planning phase for the next project, so that's not on here. So we drove quite a lot of kilometers. In the big picture, compared to Waymo and Cruise, it doesn't look like a lot. I think the ones in here that have operated either EasyMile or Navia vehicles, I think you can see that this is actually a substantial number of kilometers. There are others that have driven more than we have, but we don't need to drive anymore. Let's put it that way. Now, we hope to see this graph go drastically up in the next project, of course. So a little bit about our role, and again, this is not just to advertise Holo, it's actually to have a little bit of a discussion about how this industry is going to evolve. So we've seen presentations today. We have had a discussion today about the technology. Holo doesn't want to build autonomous software. We don't want to build autonomous vehicles. You see companies that have invested billions and billions of dollars in doing that, the Waymo and Cruises and Mobilize of the world. There are companies out there today that are servicing the end customer, mobility end customer, or logistics customers, if we're in that segment. That would be Ruder. Ruder spends a lot of time understanding mobility in the Oslo region, understanding the customer experiencing, ticketing, customer support, all these things. At some point, we thought we were going to do that. That's why we have an easy-to-say name and a nice orange bird. But we know that that's not something we want to do. We need to specialize. We need to focus our efforts. So what we want to do is we want to operate in the projects that we are in at the moment, because we have to do that to bring everything up to speed. We have to put a safety driver in the vehicle. This operator role will look different in the future. The goal is to take the safety driver out. Do we then still want to be the operator? Maybe. Maybe we want to hand it over to someone who is more used to doing operations. But that operator role is going to look very different in the future if we don't have a safety driver behind the wheel. And we'll get back to that a little bit. It is about making the software work on an everyday basis. It's not just about creating a schedule for the drivers, even though I know that's not a trivial thing to do either. Where we really want to focus our efforts is in this implementation phase. Some of the things that you've seen on the slides today, there are companies that are fulfilling a role that is outside of their core business. If you build the vehicles, if you build the software, yes, you can definitely do pilot projects, you can make it work, you can get the permit, but this role is going to get more and more complicated as this industry matures. And you're going to face competition building the vehicles, building the software. You have to focus. The death of every company is to lose focus in this. And so we see the technology is playing this role, doing their own pilot projects. And of course, we talk to them and say, you should probably work with someone like us who wants to actually take over some of these tasks. At the same time, on the other side, we see companies working with taking the responsibility from the mobility provider, logistics provider side of things, and going in, building the pilot projects, building a lot of skills up that they don't necessarily want to maintain in the long run. So what does that mean? So basically, this is Holo on a page. What does it mean to implement autonomous vehicles? This is everything we do, and this is what we're doing end-to-end in the project with Ruder in Oslo, and what we have done in our previous projects. We are now also doing a lot of these boxes more individually for other customers across Europe, because it is hard to do all of these things at the same time. We have a lot of experience in doing this. But again, the technology works, yes, but the landscape gets more complicated as we try to do more things, as we try to really expand on what it means to operate autonomous vehicles. So basically, the rest of my presentation is some details around these different things, and I will very quickly run out of time. If you want to hear more about any of these things, some of it's available online, but I'm more than happy to discuss the details of this. So let's jump into it. First of all, we need to find the right use case. And it's not just about the technology. Our mistake previously was to get too fascinated by this technology. Yes, it works. Yes, we can drive a vehicle. But should we? Are we solving a real problem? Are we delivering real mobility out there in the real world for real customers? Otherwise, we shouldn't be starting a project. Can we actually be permitted to drive on the road under the right conditions? We can do it with a safety driver. We can do it in a closed area. That's not where the need is, unfortunately. I respect the project here. I think it's super interesting, but that's not the normal kind of use case that we see around in different places. So we need to find a balance between all these things, and we need to do that before we sign any big contracts, before we buy vehicles, before we make all kinds of promises. Next, we need to find a mature vendor. This is very much a seller's market at the moment. We had to go and convince Mobileye to provide us with some vehicles. That's not how it's going to be in the future. In the future, we will evaluate all these different vendors and look for the ones that are the most mature, the ones that are willing to adapt their product for their local conditions, weather, legislation, use case, and so on, and the ones that are willing to set the right price point so we can actually deliver a proper service. So we're building up our knowledge. We're formalizing this to be able to do these evaluations on a regular basis. Then there is the safety part that you saw in the middle, the planning part and the interaction between planning and operations. This is comparable more to the aviation industry in time. We need to make sure that we have our safety in place. We need to train everybody around the route, and we need to follow up on all these things continually. We need to have everything documented. We need to have everything version controlled, because the authorities will ask these critical questions in time. In some places, in some cases, they are not asking these questions at the moment. Some of them are willing to put pilot projects on the road. If you want to remove safety drivers, if you want to really rely on the autonomous system, you need a much more strict system for managing this kind of stuff, which is what we have built and what we are now refreshing for our project in Norway. Legislation is a topic today for us as well. Everyone talks about Germany level 4. I can tell you in Scandinavia, theoretically, we have been able to go level 4 since years ago. It's not about the legislation for us. It's about proving the actual safety levels. So the authorities in Scandinavia, they talk to us much more pragmatically. They say, okay, well, if you can prove it with data that you're operating safely, if the safety driver really isn't doing anything, of course you can take him out. We just haven't found the technology to do that yet. So always bringing up Germany as the leading place, I think it's definitely interesting. It's a huge market. But if you have the right technology, you can put it on the roads in Scandinavia today without a safety driver, and you have been able to do that for years. But of course, it takes a serious approach to this. It takes a lot of documentation, and it takes really to know what it is that you're doing so you have the trust of the authorities. And that's what we have with now project number 5 in Norway. Training is a big part of it. We need to train the safety drivers as long as they're there. Then we need to train people around the route. We need to train the people who are going to supervise the vehicles. Again, it's not as complicated maybe for a pilot project or when the requirements are lower, but in time, this is going to be one of those focus areas where the authorities will look very closely. So we developed a training program. We're continually updating it. Ours is vendor agnostic. We've driven with Sensible 4 and with Navia. Now we're going to be driving with Mobileye. That means we're not reliant on one vendor's approach to doing this kind of stuff. We set the standards, and we say what is safe enough to do what we want to do, because we are the permit holder. We are the guys who are ultimately responsible for the site and for the operation. Supervision, I'm happy that we are, as an industry, aligning on a term. What do we call those people that are monitoring the vehicles from a distance? We call them supervision. Great. So now you already know what that is. Again, it's just trying to show you that it's not just a guy looking on a screen and pressing a button if it doesn't work. There's tons of different details here. For example, what happens if you have an incident? We had a small but a real drone crash yesterday. Again, I'm trying to be as open about these things as possible. The incident management procedure kicked in. I get a phone call, we document everything, we take pictures, we collect the data, we do after-action reviews where we challenge the vendor, we challenge our own team on all the procedures to make sure that when we do this in real life, there will not be any gaps in what we do. As I usually tell my team, we are one crash away from not existing as a company if we don't handle them correctly. This is about the trust, and it requires serious processes. And there's others here as well. When things work, A to B, when vehicles are driving every day, there are going to be changes. There are going to be software changes, there are going to be hardware changes, there are going to be infrastructure changes. And it is a matter of troubleshooting software, which is a very specialized task. It's not the same as a lot of other tasks that we have been used to in mobility. So, as you can see, a lot of interesting topics to dive into, and now I am over time. So, I will be very quick on the last part. We talked about managing stakeholders, we talked about the project management. It could be seen as a more generic thing, everyone can manage a project. Yes, but there is also some autonomous bits to this, putting things together, keeping the authorities informed, keeping the vehicle vendors informed, challenging them on the technology, keeping our customers informed, giving them the data that they need in their communication, in their use cases. All of this is something that requires some experience as well. And we sit usually in the middle of this. We are the ones buying the vehicles, leasing the vehicles, licensing the software, and we have a commitment to our customers to provide a certain service level. So all of this takes place in this coordination. And then at the end, there could be a whole session on the software that we build. We don't build the autonomous software itself. I usually say we build all the bits and pieces no one else wants to build. So whoever you're buying an autonomous vehicle from will happily sell you some software to manage that. The problem is, if you want to have more than one vehicle vendor in the future, you need some bits and pieces to abstract the vehicles away and to integrate them into your systems. So we built some of that. We take the data from the vehicles. Once we receive it, we put it on our platform. We own it. We can do whatever with it what we want. We send it into to the systems that makes the autonomous vehicles part of an actual traffic system. We use it for our own purposes. We know exactly what is happening on the route. We do not rely on the vehicle vendor to tell us how the vehicles are performing. We do our own analysis of that, and sometimes we do find gaps in what we're being told versus what we can see in the data. And so there's a bunch of things going on here. One thing that we try to do is we try to move around this map. So if we find a better solution than the one we can build ourselves, we can throw what we have out the window, and we can source it from the market instead. So there's some things that are not on this slide that used to be on this slide. Okay. That was as quick as I can possibly do it. We also have a lot of other things to talk about. The freight vehicles driving in the center of Oslo for the Norwegian Postal Service, also in the snow. The visit to Jerusalem with Mobileye is there. I think I cropped you out of the picture, unfortunately. You're right next to me on this picture. Sorry about that. And as you saw, the Clevon vehicle as well. This is me in Estonia. We are looking into all these different use cases and trying to figure out where the business opportunities are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. Okay, I think we have room for one or two questions. I know we're all hungry, but yeah.
I have one on one of the slides. There was down at the bottom interaction with infrastructure.
Yep.
It's not a question I know, but why?
Why not? So the one slide I didn't bring. You can paint two graphs. Someone was actually talking about it a little bit. You can talk on one axis, you have the capabilities of the autonomous vehicle. On the other, you have the complexity of the surroundings. So what you see here is in Terhills, I'm looking forward to going on a ride. You have you've reduced the complexity of the surroundings. So you can have one of the vehicles today that has a certain performance level. So one of the ways to bring the complexity of the surroundings down is by installing infrastructure that helps the vehicle with the maturity of the software where it is. If you can put LiDARs on a route, if you can put fences down like some vendors do, if you can put magnets in the road, if you can do a bunch of different things in the infrastructure, you can do different things with the autonomous vehicle. If, as we are doing with Mobileye, we don't expect to make any major infrastructure changes really, you have to rely on the software 100%.
One final question. Yes.
Olivier Perrault from EasyMile. You said earlier that you are the one in charge of defining what is safe enough, and you also said that the authorities will ask you to prove that through data.
Yeah.
So my question is, what is safe enough for you, and how do you prove that?
That's a good question. It's a work in progress because we haven't been able to take the safety driver out, which is the goal for everyone. So we don't know exactly where the finish line is. What we have done in previous projects is we have taken all the events that are keeping us from doing that, and we have produced reports to our customers, to the authorities, and had this conversation with them. We have never come to a point where we have told the authorities, Now we think we're ready to take the safety driver out. So we don't know exactly what the finish line is. We expect to get much closer with Mobileye. We expect to be able to go to a point where we think it's safe enough and then ask the authorities to give the permission to go over that line. But it's a combination of many data points. It's things not failing on a regular hour, day, that us not interacting with other traffic in a non-safe way, could even come down to some public acceptance that people feel that it's safe enough to actually get that permit. But it is the big question, and it's going to be an individual answer in different countries, what that authority in that country thinks is safe enough.
Okay, thank you very much, Christian. Okay, one final, very, very quick question.
Thank you. So my name is Roel, I'm from Ziegler, but a transportation company. One of the big issues that we have is we don't find any drivers anymore.
Yeah.
That's in Europe. I'm not sure if it's in Scandinavia.
Oh, yes.
All right, yes.
Yeah, so I noted down things that we could also talk about. We can talk about, one of the things is demographics changing. So why are we in Norway as a Danish company? Because that's where the demographics are changing. It's hard to hire the bus drivers. It's hard to hire the truck drivers. This is driven by the high labor costs, of course, and it's driven by changing demographics. Now I have a foot in Switzerland as well. It'll be similar. A lot of other European countries will experience the same thing. So when we talk about the business case, it's not about providing a cheaper solution to what's already there. It's about whether or not you can actually provide mobility or logistics in the future. Then our business case looks very different if the option is not doing it at all. So that's what we're driven by. The business case for drones offshore, it's already there. We don't have to discuss it anymore. We're already saving the money.